So I keep seeing the usual comment keep popping up about Tommy Robinson and people defending Nigel Farage for not endorsing Tommy Robinson or for wanting anything to do with him, which is fair enough. That is fair enough. If Nigel Farage doesn't want anything to do with Tommy Robinson, that is absolutely fair enough. But Nigel Farage needs to handle it like Ben Habib handles it when he's asked about Tommy Robinson. When Ben Habib is asked about Tommy Robinson, he says, look, I don't know Tommy Robinson. I don't know the ins and outs of the guy or anything like that. And he says, I can't comment on Tommy Robinson because I know nothing about him. That's the diplomatic way of dealing with the question of Tommy Robinson. If you're in the political eye with the mainstream media, that's how you handle it. Nigel Farage has been just going on the absolute attack of Tommy Robinson. That the interviews recently with GB News have just been outright attacks on Tommy Robinson and spreading misinformation about Tommy and smearing him. When he's asked about Tommy Robinson, he says, "Oh, he's been in and out of prison for mortgage fraud, which we know is bogus. That was just lawfare. It was a technicality. Tommy didn't even have anything to do with the mortgage fraud or anything like that. It's well documented. There's even a video about it on, I think it's on Urban Scoop. The contempt of court rulings where he's been put in prison for contempt of court are all just lawfare used against him because he's speaking out on things that the state doesn't want Tommy Robinson to speak out on. That's why he's been put in prison for contempt of court. That's why he's in prison for contempt of court now. And I saw a comment, and it was quite true actually. It said, how can you be in contempt of a corrupt court? Because that's exactly what they are. These courts are corrupt. They're enforcing the establishment's rule. There is supposed to be a separation between the police, the CPS, the judiciary and government. And that isn't happening. We know there's influence going on here, that they're all aligning the police, the judiciary, the CPS, the court system, the government. They're all aligning to attack Tommy Robinson. That's the reason why he was in a maximum security prison. I don't know if the one he's in now, Woodhill, is that a maximum security prison? I don't know. But he's in a prison for a civil offence. Normally, people like Tommy Robinson wouldn't be in a prison like that for a civil offence, for contempt of court. They would be in an open prison. And I think Tommy said that in an open prison for the charge that he's been charged with, he would be allowed home 5 days a month. He'd be allowed a car. He would be able to go to work every day and stuff like that. But they can't allow Tommy Robinson out to do his job because his job is to expose the establishment. That's why he's not in an open prison. That's why they say it's because of his divisive ideology. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Divisive ideology. In whose opinion? Theirs, because he's exposing them for what they've been doing, their corruption, their inaction, their cover-ups. Is that what they mean? Because he's divisive to them and their authority? And if that's the case, then he shouldn't be in prison, shouldn't he? Should he? He's a journalist. Journalists are supposed to speak truth to power. They're supposed to hold the government to account. That's the main job of an investigative journalist, is to hold power to account. And that's exactly what Tommy Robinson was doing. Something our mainstream media hasn't been doing for decades. That's why they smear him, because they're not, the mainstream media aren't journalists. They're not investigative journalists anymore. They're just activists who just give their opinion on TV, don't they? Anyway, I've digressed off of that one. Let's get back to Nigel Farage. So he's been smearing Tommy Robinson at every opportunity. He's been lying by omission. He's been saying that he's in court, he's in prison because of contempt of court, but he's not been saying why those contempt of court charges have been brought against Tommy Robinson. The first time, like I said this in a live stream, the first time he went to prison for contempt of court was because he was reading off his phone what the BBC had already said. And the police came out and arrested him because they said that he was going to prejudice the case, even though the case had already been done and over. The grooming gang members that he was there reporting on had already been sentenced. So there was no way in hell that he could have influenced that case in any way, shape or form by reading out what the BBC had already reported. And in that instance, he was sent to prison, and once again, he was in solitary confinement for months. This is lawfare. This is cruel and unusual punishment being used against a British citizen. This is something that you would see in North Korea or China. Not in Britain. Not in this day and age. I mean, this is what we fought to stop from happening in this country. But Nigel Farage just lies by omission. He says, oh no, Tommy's in prison. It's not because he's exposing grooming gangs, because he is. That's what he's been doing for the past 15 years. He's got several documentaries out called The Rape of Britain, which highlight the Muslim grooming gangs and what they've been doing to our daughters and our children in this country. And that is something the establishment can't allow to be exposed, because they're in it up to their necks. And this is something I think Nigel Farage does understand it. He's just using this as an opportunity to shut down who he perceives someone as opposition to his popularity, because Nigel Farage is all ego. And I want people to come to this video and try and defend Nigel Farage and say, Nigel Farage can't touch Tommy Robinson because he's too toxic. Really? I said this in the live stream as well. There are people in Parliament right now who have been on tag because they've committed criminal acts. There are people in Parliament right now who are friends with terrorists. We have Jeremy Corbyn, who's in Parliament right now, who's friends with dictators who have committed horrendous human rights violations. And yet, these people are saying, oh, Nigel Farage can't touch Tommy Robinson because he's too toxic. Really? He's too toxic? I don't think so. That's a bullshit argument. I'm sick of hearing it. I really am. It's because Nigel Farage either hasn't got the balls or doesn't want to stand up for Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson could be any one of us. Any one of us could find ourselves in the same situation that Tommy's in right now. And from Nigel Farage's actions, would he deem us too toxic to help us out if we were persecuted and put in prison for our opinions and our views and for calling out the government on its corruption? Because it doesn't look like he would be there for any of us, because he would deem us too toxic, because him becoming Prime Minister is more important than your freedom or your right to free speech or your right to free expression. That's what he's telling me right now, that he'll throw anybody under the bus to obtain the power that he wants. And that is somebody we don't want in charge of this country. We've had enough of that in the past. And this leads me on to another thing. We need to stop treating our political leaders and our political parties and people involved in political parties as celebrities, as rock stars. They're not. They are public servants. We need to treat them more like we would utility companies. If a utility company isn't providing the service that we require, we abandon that utility company and we switch and we go to another one that is going to provide a better service. That's how we need to treat our political parties and our political class. Not like celebrities or put them on pedestals and trying to protect them from criticism, because that's not helpful for anybody. That's how we've landed ourselves in this situation for the past 50 years. That's why we've had the uni party, because we've got this tribalism where people refuse to criticise their own party and say, no, their policies are shit, we're not going to vote for those people anymore. It's become like a celebrity status that we have to, like, you know, fanboys, like, it's like, oh, you know, we're going to put their posters up on the wall and worship them like gods. No, that's not the way forward. That's what's landed us in this situation right now. That's what's landed us with a political class that's weak. It's because they just think, oh, you know, they'll just vote for us anyway because they're too stupid not to. And that needs to change. And you know, I know people in Reform, members of Reform, they can't affect any change in that party because they don't have the ability to get rid of Nigel Farage as leader. But what needs to happen is you need to put pressure on Reform. And the only way you can do that is by voting with your money, is to cancel your memberships of Reform. And once those numbers start to dwindle, they start seeing memberships going down, that's when they'll start to take notice. You have to hit them in the pocket, hit them where it hurts them most. And then they'll start to take notice. And then you'll see people thinking, we need leadership change in Reform or we're going to tank. We're not going to make it to the next general election. And I saw some commentators on YouTube have been saying that Elon Musk, after Nigel Farage intervenes, will most likely drop support for Tommy Robinson. I don't think that at all. I think the opposite is going to happen. Look at this message on screen right now. That is directed at Nigel Farage. Elon Musk has basically said, he says, I know why Tommy Robinson is in prison for contempt of court. And he says, but it's not right that he's in prison for a civil offence for, what was it, 18 months? 18 months for a civil offence. People that have been going around committing sexual assaults on girls haven't even been getting that. They've been getting suspended sentences. But because Tommy is telling the truth, then they have to they have to come down and overstep the mark with the law and come down heavily on Tommy. Let it sink in. Tommy Robinson is in prison right now for a civil offence for 18 months in solitary confinement, eating tins of tuna for 23 hours of the day for a civil offence. There's no way that's legal, is it? And it's not right. And as a citizen of this country, that's something that Nigel Farage should be highlighting. He should be saying, look, me and Tommy Robinson have our differences, but there's no way that man should be in prison for that amount of time for that offence. He should be defending Tommy Robinson. And this is what worries me. It's like, if he won't defend Tommy Robinson, then he won't defend any of us. If we're deemed toxic by the mainstream media, Nigel Farage won't touch you with a barge pole. And that's not the virtue of a leader, is it? Anyway, I've ranted enough. I've gone on way too long. This is Vindicator. Sign off.